The hallway smelled like polished marble and fake sympathy. My mother stood beside my sister, both dressed like they owned the place, my old family home, now spotless for their weekend get-together. I wasn't invited, of course. But when I arrived anyway, the laughter stopped. Their eyes flicked toward the velvet bag in my hand. Inside was the apartment key I'd begged them to come see for months, the one they all refused to visit because it wasn't classy enough. Now, photos of that same apartment, glowing under city lights, featured in a home design magazine, filled every phone in that room. My sister froze. My mother smiled too late. They had no idea that the place they mocked had become my victory. Cameras flashed. Reporters whispered my name. I turned to them, voice calm but sharp as glass. They thought this would break me, I said, but they had no idea what was coming. The room went silent. Just before the knock on the door changed everything. When I first moved into my apartment, it wasn't much. A cracked wall behind the sink, windows that rattled when the buses passed, and a single bulb swinging from the ceiling like it couldn't decide whether to stay or burn out. But it was mine. Every inch of that tiny space carried something I earned, not borrowed, not handed down, not taken from someone else's sacrifice. I remember the day I got the keys. My hands shook as the landlord smiled and said, "Congratulations." It wasn't luxury, but it was freedom. And for me, that meant more than gold-plated family dinners ever could. My family didn't see it that way. Mom said, "Apartments are for people who don't think long-term." My sister, Alina, laughed. "You'll be back home in 6 months when the bills hit." Even my uncle, who hadn't worked a day in years, told me, "You should have stayed close." Family is everything. Funny how family always meant their comfort, not mine. Still, I kept quiet. I decorated the place with thrift store finds, painted the walls a soft cream, and planted a small peace lily on the window ledge. It was the first living thing I'd taken care of in years that didn't talk back or drain me. I invited them over a few times, each time the same response. "Oh, maybe next week." Gas is expensive right now. Or worse, silence. Yet every weekend, they found their way to Alina's new house in the suburbs. Instagram stories filled with wine glasses, fairy lights, and matching sweaters. "Family night," she'd caption it, and in the corner of every photo, Mom's smile. Proud, warm, complete. The kind of smile she used to save for me. At first, I told myself it didn't matter. I had work. I had peace. But loneliness has a way of whispering at night, especially when you've spent your whole life begging to be seen. One Sunday, I stopped by their house to drop off some things Mom had asked for. Documents, receipts, errands she could have done herself. When I stepped into the living room, I heard Alina's voice before she saw me. "She's obsessed with proving something," she said. Mom sighed. "You can't help people who want to suffer." "Let her live in that shoebox." My chest went cold. They laughed, not knowing I was standing in the doorway. That was the moment something inside me changed. I didn't cry. I didn't speak. I just walked out, drove home, and sat in my apartment in silence. That night, the rain hit the windows like tiny fists, but instead of feeling small, I felt free. That was the first night I decided to stop trying to be invited. The next morning, I started documenting everything. My small renovations, my progress, my solitude. A friend from work noticed and said, "You should post this. People love real stories." So I did, one photo at a time. Not curated, not perfect, just mine. Within weeks, strangers online celebrated what my own family ignored. A home decor page reposted my living room setup. Then a local magazine reached out for an interview. The art of starting over. That's when things really began to shift. But before the spotlight came, before the validation and headlines, came the sting. It was Alina's birthday dinner. Mom had asked me to come and behave this time. When I walked in, I noticed one thing immediately. Every gift had been wrapped in gold paper except mine. Mine sat at the end of the table, untouched, wrapped in plain white. When she opened it, a framed photo of our childhood home, she laughed. "This is cute. Very sentimental." Then she looked at Mom and said, "Maybe one day she'll have something real to show." Everyone laughed. I just smiled, because deep down, I already knew. The next thing I'd show them would change everything. And when they finally saw it, it would be too late. After Alina's birthday dinner, things between us shifted, subtly at first. Calls from my mother became shorter. Texts from relatives came with strange undertones. "We're worried about you. Don't isolate yourself. Family always forgives, you know." Forgives what, exactly? It was clear. Alina had started talking, and everyone had started listening. She'd always had that power. The way she tilted her head, sighed just enough to sound exhausted, and painted herself as the patient sister. "I love her," she'd say, "but she's difficult." Always making everything about herself. I found out later that she'd been showing people screenshots of my apartment photos, adding snide captions like, "Meanwhile, she can't even afford curtains." They turned my small victories into punchlines, and because I didn't fight back, they assumed I agreed. It's strange how silence becomes a weapon when others fill it for you. At work, I started to feel the weight. I'd stare at spreadsheets, but see only the replay of that dinner, the laughter, the pity. I began losing sleep. My chest tightened at night. My hands trembled during meetings. There's a particular kind of exhaustion that doesn't show, when your body looks fine, but your spirit is bruised from being unseen. Still, I smiled through it, because I had a goal now. If they wouldn't see me as family, they'd see me as something they couldn't ignore. One Friday, my building manager stopped by my apartment. He was an older man, kind eyes, quiet voice, the type who notices things others miss. "Place looks great," he said, scanning the plants, the art, the new bookshelf I'd built. "Doing all this yourself?" "Yeah," I said. "Bit by bit." He smiled. "Keep it up. You've got a good eye." That simple compliment hit harder than any family praise ever had. Maybe because it was honest. He left a card on the counter, a flyer for a community design fair happening next month. "Enter this," he said. "You never know who's watching." I almost threw it away, but something in me, that small voice I'd learned to hush for years, whispered, "Do it." So I did. The following weeks were a blur of paint, fabric swatches, and late-night ideas. I transformed that small apartment into something alive, not just a home, but a story. Every corner spoke of struggle turned into purpose. When the fair finally came, I stood beside my modest display, photos, a short video tour, and a single quote on a board. "You don't need more space. You need more peace." People stopped. They smiled. They felt it. By the end of the day, a woman approached me, elegant, confident, clipboard in hand. "I'm with Home and Heart magazine," she said. "We'd love to feature your work in our next issue." It's authentic. For a moment, I couldn't speak. Then I said softly, "Thank you." When the feature went live, everything changed. Friends from college texted congratulations. Colleagues dropped by my desk, wide-eyed. But the silence from my family? Deafening. Until Mom finally called. "I saw your little article," she said, her tone clipped. "Good for you. Just remember where you came from." "Believe me," I said quietly. "I never forget." That was the last civil conversation we had. Because the following week, Alina posted a family appreciation video. Our old home, our mother cooking, soft piano music. Her caption read, "Some of us never forget our roots." It wasn't subtle. It was war, dressed in smiles and hashtags. And yet I didn't crumble this time. Because someone had noticed. Someone believed in me before they did. And that changed everything. The next week, I got a message from the magazine editor herself. "Your story's getting traction. We'd love a follow-up, maybe even a segment on your journey." My pulse raced. For once, the world wasn't laughing. It was listening. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and smiled. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't fighting alone. That was the first time someone reminded me, I whispered, that I wasn't alone. The magazine feature spread faster than I ever expected. Minimalism with Meaning: How One Woman Transformed Her First Apartment into a Story of Resilience. It wasn't viral, but it was visible. Enough for people in our small city to talk. For me, it was just a milestone. For my family, it was an insult. A week later, my aunt called. "I don't know what's gotten into you," she said. "You're embarrassing your family, talking about struggle like we didn't raise you right." Then my mother joined the call. "You could have thanked us publicly," she said. "All those people reading your article, do they even know who helped you get here?" I paused. "Helped me?" I asked quietly. There was a long silence on the line before she hung up. That was the moment I realized they weren't angry because I succeeded. They were angry because I succeeded without their permission. The next few weeks turned ugly. My mother started calling my boss just to check if I was managing well. Alina posted cryptic stories about fake humility and attention seekers. Even cousins I hadn't spoken to in years sent me messages like, "You should talk to Mom. She's really hurt." Hurt. That word kept echoing in my mind, as if their pain was more important than my peace. At work, whispers followed me. Someone even forwarded me a screenshot from a neighborhood Facebook group. It was my mother, complaining that fame had changed me. Dozens of comments underneath agreed. Strangers, siding with her. It felt like being erased in real time, like no matter what I built, they still held the pen to my story. I started losing focus again, missing meals, overworking, forcing smiles in meetings. One night, my friend and mentor, Clara, noticed. She'd been the one who'd first encouraged me to enter the design fair, a retired architect with kind eyes and zero patience for self-doubt. "You're letting them rent space in your head again," she said, setting down 2 mugs of coffee. "I can't just ignore them," I said. "They're my family." She tilted her head. "No, sweetheart. They're your relatives. Family doesn't weaponize your healing." I stared at her. But how do I fight back without becoming like them? "You don't fight back," she said softly. "You rise higher. Quietly, publicly, and let truth do the talking." Her words stayed with me. 2 weeks later, I was invited to a small panel discussion for young designers. I almost said no, until I realized who the sponsor was: the City Property Association. The same one my uncle worked with, the same circle my mother bragged about knowing personally. I could already hear them. "She's not qualified, she's just lucky." But luck doesn't hang drywall at 2 a.m. or paint with numb fingers. So I went. The event hall shimmered with glass and chrome, expensive, cold, intimidating. When I walked to the stage, I noticed my uncle in the audience. He leaned toward someone and smirked. Perfect. When it was my turn to speak, I didn't talk about decor or colors. I talked about space, about how some people grow up believing they need permission to take it, and how reclaiming your own space, no matter how small, can rebuild your entire identity. The room went silent. When I finished, they clapped. Even my uncle didn't meet my eyes. Afterward, the event coordinator approached me. "We'd love to feature your apartment in our Emerging Designers Showcase," she said. "It's the kind of authenticity we've been missing." I smiled, but not for the applause, because I could already see it, their control slipping, their narrative crumbling. That night, my mother called again, voice tight, trembling. So, you're speaking at property events now? Yes, I said calmly. You didn't think to consult us first? Consult you? I repeated. About my life? She exhaled sharply. You're making us look like fools. I paused, then said quietly, I'm not making you look like anything. You're doing that yourselves. The silence that followed was heavier than any argument we'd ever had. From that day, the calls stopped. But the posts, the whispers, the gossip, they didn't. In fact, they doubled. Family group chats filled with fake concern. She's changing. She's forgetting her roots. She'll come crashing down soon enough. And maybe once that would have broken me. But not anymore. Because now I had proof, written, published, undeniable, and allies who saw through the act. As I looked out my apartment window that night, the city lights reflected off the glass like quiet fire. They thought they still had control, I whispered. They didn't. The silence didn't last long. People like my family never retreat. They regroup. By the end of that month, the war had gone digital. Anonymous comments appeared under my magazine feature. Fake story. She stole design ideas. Her family helped her, and now she pretends she did it alone. The usernames were new, but the phrasing was familiar. My mother's sharp tone, my sister's smug rhythm. Even online, I could hear their voices. At first, I ignored it. Then the sponsors for my design showcase started calling. Just a few concerns, they said carefully. Apparently, someone had emailed them claiming my apartment wasn't really mine, that I was renting for image. That lie cut deeper than I expected, because my apartment, that small, imperfect space, was the one thing I'd built completely on my own, the one thing no one could take away, or so I thought. A week later, my landlord texted, Hey, just got a strange call asking about your lease. Everything okay? My stomach dropped. They weren't just trying to ruin my reputation. They were trying to ruin my home. I called my mom immediately. She didn't deny it. Instead, she said, You shouldn't have made this public. People talk. You talk, I shot back. And they listen. Her voice turned cold. You think fame will protect you? Wait till people see what kind of person you really are. She hung up. That night, I sat in the dark, staring at the reflection of my peace lily on the window. Its leaves drooped slightly, still alive, but tired. I understood the feeling. The next morning, I woke up with a new kind of clarity. For years, I'd survived by being quiet. Now, quiet was letting them rewrite me. So I did something I'd never done before. I documented everything. Every text, every call, every rumor screenshot, every receipt that proved what I'd paid, owned, and earned. It wasn't revenge. It was preparation. Because when truth is all you have left, you protect it like armor. Around that time, Clara came over with 2 cups of tea and a small battered box. I was saving this for when you were ready, she said. Inside were old design award applications, mentorship forms, and her personal contacts in media. You've earned your voice, she told me. Now use it. That night, I sat down and wrote my story. Not the filtered version, not the pretty one. The real one. About how some people mistake control for love. How families can smile while tightening their grip. And how walking away isn't betrayal, it's survival. When I was done, I submitted it to the same magazine that had first featured me. I didn't expect a reply. But 2 days later, the editor emailed, Your honesty is powerful. We'd like to run this as a cover story. The price of permission. I stared at the screen, hands trembling. The piece wasn't just about decor anymore. It was about me, about every person who's ever been told they owe their piece to someone else's comfort. When the story went live, it exploded. Messages poured in from strangers. This is my story too. I thought I was the only one. Thank you for saying what I couldn't. I'd built a community overnight, people who understood, and suddenly, the rumors didn't matter, because truth travels slower than lies, but it lasts longer. My sister, on the other hand, couldn't handle the attention shift. She began posting motivational reels about loyalty and respect. Her tone got sharper, her captions more bitter. People noticed. The same relatives who'd mocked me started reaching out quietly. "You really did good for yourself," one cousin messaged. "We didn't know how bad it got," said another. But I didn't reply. Because validation once begged for feels hollow when it finally arrives. Instead, I focused on what mattered. My peace, my work, my boundaries. I framed my apartment's lease, the original document, and hung it in the hallway. A small, private symbol. My proof. And each night I wrote one sentence in my notebook. They can twist my story, but they can't touch my truth. When the magazine's next press event announced my upcoming panel, I smiled at the headline, "The Day of Reckoning." How one woman redefined family and freedom. I closed my laptop, looked around my apartment, the light, the plants, the silence, and whispered, the day of reckoning was coming, and no one could stop it. The invitation came on a Thursday evening, cream paper, gold lettering, family gathering to reconnect and heal. It was from my mother. I almost laughed. After months of silence, after every whisper, every lie, now she wanted to heal. But something in me said go, not out of hope, out of closure. I packed light, just my phone, my keys, and one manila folder, proof in paper form. The house looked exactly as I remembered. Lavender candles, polished marble floors, and the same family portraits on the wall. All smiling, all staged. When I stepped inside, conversation died mid-sentence. My sister, Alina, stood near the dining table, arms crossed. Mom was beside her, that same polite smile stretched too tight. "You came," Mom said, voice brittle. "I wasn't sure you'd bother." "I almost didn't," I replied. I scanned the room. Aunts, uncles, cousins, everyone who had chosen sides, just not mine. The air hummed with tension. Even the chandelier seemed to flicker under it. Mom cleared her throat. "We just wanted to talk. As a family, you've made some choices that hurt people." "Like moving out? Or existing?" I asked. Alina rolled her eyes. "This attitude is exactly why we drifted apart. You made everything about you, your pain, your healing, your little stories for strangers." "Little stories?" I said softly. "You mean the ones that paid my rent when you laughed at my walls?" Her expression faltered. I placed the manila folder on the table. "Before you continue, you should know, I brought everything." Mom frowned. "Everything?" I opened the folder. Inside were printouts, screenshots of messages, copies of emails to my sponsors, the anonymous comments, even the call logs from my landlord. Her face went pale. Alina's jaw tightened. "Is this supposed to scare us?" Mom asked, voice shaking slightly. "No," I said. "It's to remind you. I'm done pretending." For a moment, no one spoke. Then, my uncle tried to laugh it off. "You really think this proves anything?" I turned to him. "It proves enough. Enough to show who's been trying to sabotage me. Enough to show what family really meant all this time." I pulled out one last page, a printout of my published story, The Price of Permission. It had a quote highlighted in yellow. "Sometimes, the hardest walls to break aren't built of brick, but of expectations." I slid it toward my mother. "I wrote that about you." Her eyes glistened. "After everything I've done for you," I exhaled. "That's the point. You think love is a ledger, that I owe you receipts for my happiness? But love isn't control, Mom. It's respect." The room went silent. Even Alina, usually ready with a smirk, stared down at the floor. At that moment, I realized something. I didn't need them to understand. I just needed them to see me. And they did. The power they'd held for years, the guilt, the manipulation, vanished in that silence. All that was left was truth. I gathered my folder, stood tall, and said the words I'd practiced for months. I don't want apologies. I want change. No one moved. No one spoke. The chandelier flickered again, as if even the light didn't want to break the quiet. Then, finally, Mom whispered, "You've changed." I met her gaze. "That's the idea." I walked out without another word. Outside, the evening air hit cool and clean, like breathing after years underwater. I looked up at the house one last time. Inside, they were still frozen, not out of guilt, but realization. They couldn't unsee the truth now. As I walked down the driveway, a familiar car pulled up. Clara leaned out the window, smiling softly. "How'd it go?" I smiled back. "They thought this would break me," I said. But they had no idea what was coming. In the rearview mirror, the lights of the house grew smaller, until they disappeared entirely. And for the first time, I didn't feel left out. I felt free. It's been 6 months since that night, since the folder hit the table, since my mother's silence turned heavy. I haven't heard from them since. And that's okay. Peace doesn't always mean forgiveness. Sometimes it's just distance. The magazine story became a documentary, The Apartment They Refused to See. When it aired, messages poured in, people starting over, finding courage. It wasn't just my story anymore. It was ours. One day, an envelope arrived, a photo of me and Alina, and my mother's note. "You were right. I'm trying to learn." I framed it, not as forgiveness, but freedom. As the sun set, I whispered, "They missed the view." This wasn't the end. It was the beginning. Have you ever built something beautiful and watched the people you loved ignore it? Have you ever begged for their pride, only to realize you didn't need it to shine? Because worth isn't something they give you. It's something you claim. Every time you choose peace over approval, every time you build your own home, even if no one visits. So tell me, what did you build that they never saw coming? Remember, the view they missed was never meant for them.